What if I told you that the nightmare doesn't end when the cell door slams shut? What if I told you that for Bryan Kohberger, convicted in the brutal murders of four innocent University of Idaho students, his punishment has only just begun? Stay with me because what you about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about justice, punishment, and what it truly means to pay for your crimes. July 23, 2025. The courtroom atmosphere was suffocating. You could hear a pin drop as the judge's gavel struck down, sealing Bryan Kohberger's fate with consecutive life sentences. No possibility of parole. Ever. The judge's words cut through the silence like a knife. I'm unable to come up with anything redeeming about Mr. Kohberger. His grotesque acts of evil have buried anything that might have been good or intrinsically human about him. His actions have made him the worst of the worst. Even in pleading guilty, he gives nothing hinting of remorse or redemption, nothing suggesting even a recognition of the pain that he has caused. Before we continue, let's take a moment to remember the real victims of this tragedy. Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernadle, and Ethan Chapin. Four bright souls with their whole lives ahead of them, stolen in a single night of unimaginable horror. Their families will never hear their laughter again. They'll never celebrate another birthday, another graduation, another milestone. May their memories be eternal blessings. May their families find peace in knowing justice was served. And may we never forget that behind every true crime story, there are real people whose lives matter. Type them in the comments and tell me where you're watching from as we honor their memory together. Now, here's what most people don't understand. What waited for Bryan Kohberger inside Idaho's maximum security institution wasn't just punishment. It was something far more sinister. Something that would break most people within weeks. As an investigative reporter who spent years covering cases like this, I can tell you that what happens behind those concrete walls is often more terrifying than anything Hollywood could create. The question isn't whether Kohberger deserves this. The question is, can any human mind survive it? Hours after his arrival, something happened that gave us our first glimpse into what his life would become. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you inside those walls first, because you need to understand exactly where he ended up. The Idaho Maximum Security Institution. Located just south of Boise, this isn't your typical prison. This is Idaho's only maximum security facility. This is where the state sends its most dangerous, most closely monitored inmates. This is where death row prisoners spend their final years. And this is now Bryan Kohberger's permanent home. He was placed in J Block, a long-term restrictive housing unit with around 30 inmates. But here's what makes this particularly chilling. His neighbors? Chad Daybell, convicted in one of Idaho's most infamous murder cases. Other high-profile killers. Men who will never see freedom again. Men who've already accepted their fate. The difference? They've made peace with it. Kohberger hasn't. Picture this. 23 hours a day locked inside a small concrete cell. Alone. 1 hour for outdoor recreation. Every time he moves, he's placed in restraints. Showers every other day. His entire world reduced to a space smaller than most people's bathrooms. But wait, it gets worse. Much worse. During his first week, officials placed him in a medical transition unit while they assessed his condition. They needed to determine where he'd be housed long-term. And within just 4 days, something happened that revealed everything about how unprepared he was for this new reality. He filed his first complaint. Not about safety, not about mistreatment, about something that will absolutely shock you. He couldn't access the prison's electronic payment system to order commissary items. Think about that for a second. This man, who once studied criminology, who once analyzed criminal behavior from the safety of academia, was now complaining because he couldn't figure out how to order snacks. A correctional officer had to explain to him that the setup process takes time after a transfer. This was his wake-up call. Inside these walls, he wasn't a scholar. He wasn't special. He was just another inmate learning that everything he once took for granted was gone. And that was only day 4. If you think that's disturbing, wait until you hear what happened next. July 29, 2025. Kohberger was moved to his permanent cell on the second tier of J Block, designated as J2. His first 2 nights there were anything but peaceful. In fact, they were the beginning of a psychological nightmare that continues to this day. The very next morning, July 30th, he filed his first major complaint. And this is where things take a truly dark turn. Through the air vents, he started hearing voices. Constant, relentless, never-ending voices. Shouts. insults, taunts. Other inmates had found their target, and they weren't letting up. These sounds never stopped. They echoed through the ventilation system day and night, invading his cell, his thoughts, his sanity. Kohberger described it as minute-by-minute verbal harassment. Every hour of every day, he wrote, someone is saying something through the vents. Let that sink in for a moment. Imagine being trapped in a small room, unable to escape, while voices constantly taunt you through the walls. You can't see who's doing it. You can't make it stop. And prison officials? They can't help you because they can't identify exactly who's responsible. Chris McDonough, a retired detective and director at the Cold Case Foundation, explained it perfectly. I don't think Bryan Kohberger anticipated the psychological pressure he'd face from other inmates. As soon as he got there, it started, and he began filing complaints immediately. Here's the truly horrifying part. One correctional officer confirmed hearing inmates shouting toward Kohberger's cell around that time. But because they couldn't determine exactly who was responsible, the complaint was closed. No action taken. Case closed. The inmates had found a loophole. The shared ventilation system let them torment him while avoiding individual accountability. And they were just getting started. But if you think the voices were bad, you haven't heard the worst part yet. Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you might make you reconsider everything you thought about prison justice. That same day, Kohberger reported something that revealed just how chaotic his environment had become. Some inmates were intentionally flooding their cells. This wasn't random misbehavior. This was strategic. This was warfare. They were creating chaos, drawing attention, disrupting the entire unit. And Kohberger was caught in the middle of it. Desperate for relief, he requested to be moved to B-Block, a quieter section of the facility. He cited the ongoing disruptions, the hostile environment, the psychological toll it was taking on him. The response? Denied. Officials told him that J-Block was generally calm and controlled. They advised him to give it some time, to adapt, to toughen up. For someone already drowning in psychological pressure, that response was devastating. Dr. Gary Bercato, a forensic psychologist, explained why this matters. Individuals like Kohberger, used to structure, control, and analytical thinking, often find the unpredictability of prison life overwhelming. In his case, isolation didn't mean peace. It meant pressure. Every complaint he filed, every request for help, every sign of weakness only made things worse. Because inside J-Block, the other inmates were watching, and they were learning exactly how to break him. The next day, July 31st, another complaint, this time about his meals. I have, on several occasions, not received all items on my tray, he wrote, demanding that missing food items be replaced according to policy. Kohberger follows a strict vegan diet. While the Idaho Department of Correction provides vegan options, he claimed his trays were occasionally incomplete. The nutritional standard is not being upheld unless I receive my full tray. For someone used to control and precision, these small disruptions were torture. But here's what experts noticed immediately. Paul Morrow, a retired NYPD inspector, observed, from what's been reported, Kohberger appears to be overly focused on minor grievances. It doesn't suggest he's adjusting well to life inside. Keith Rovier, a former prison minister, added something even more revealing. Inmates quickly learn who can handle pressure and who can't. Complaining too much can make things harder for you inside. And that's the key. Every complaint, every grievance, every cry for help was sending a message to the other inmates. In prison, silence means strength. Kohberger's constant complaints were showing everyone around him exactly where his breaking point was. 3 weeks into his sentence, August 12, 2025, the Idaho Department of Correction held a housing placement hearing for Bryan Kohberger. After multiple incidents, constant complaints, and obvious psychological distress, he formally requested protective custody. What happened during that hearing reveals just how much he was struggling. In a rare moment of self-awareness, Kohberger admitted that the harassment would likely fade once public attention around his case slowed down. But then he made several requests that painted a disturbing picture of his mental state. He asked to continue having recreation time alone. He requested individual escorts for safety reasons. Yet at the same time, he expressed a desire to eventually work and find ways to be productive while in custody. He even asked for the same recreation privileges as another high-profile inmate in the same unit. Think about that contradiction. He wanted isolation and protection, but also productivity and equal treatment. He was caught between needing safety and needing purpose, between accepting his fate and fighting against it. The three-member housing committee reached their decision. Kohberger would remain in administrative segregation, the same restricted environment, the same isolation, the same conditions he was desperately trying to escape. It was determined to be the safest option for both staff and inmates, including Kohberger himself. A spokesperson later explained, "Incarcerated individuals commonly communicate with each other in prison. Bryan Kohberger is housed alone in a cell, and IDOC staff maintain a safe and orderly environment for everyone in custody." Translation: the noise, the voices, the harassment were all just part of prison life. Something he'd have to accept. Something that wasn't going to change. By this point, Kohberger had filed 5 formal complaints in just 3 weeks. That's nearly one every few days. Prison consultant Cameron Lindsay told Fox News Digital, "My prediction is he'll remain where he is. He's currently in a secure setting that protects both him and others." Lindsay also noted that adjusting quietly to prison routines often helps reduce tension over time. But that's exactly what Kohberger seemed unable to do. Every complaint drew more attention. Every request for transfer made him more of a target. And inside J Block, that attention was dangerous. By mid-August, something shifted. Kohberger's complaints became less about harassment and more about the mundane frustrations of prison life. He filed a grievance over a missing supply bag. Staff reminded him that requests were processed once a week. It was a minor issue, but it showed how his existence had narrowed. Every small inconvenience became magnified. Filing complaints wasn't about fixing problems anymore. It was about holding on to some shred of control in a world where he had absolutely none. A few days later, on August 18th, something unexpected happened. He sent a thank you note to Sergeant Martin for helping him with commissary printouts. His JPay account issues were finally resolved. Think about what that means. This man, who once analyzed criminal behavior from an academic perspective, was now expressing gratitude for help accessing a prison payment system. That counted as a victory now. That was progress. But then came something that reminded everyone, including Kohberger himself, that privacy inside these walls is an illusion. Reports surfaced online claiming that short clips of Kohberger inside his cell had leaked on social media. Whether the footage was real or fake didn't matter. The Idaho Department of Correction launched an internal investigation. They warned staff that any recording or distribution of security footage would result in severe consequences. News outlets covered it for days. Inside J Block, inmates whispered about it. Kohberger couldn't escape being the center of attention, even behind concrete and steel. Defense attorney and Taylor publicly condemned the alleged leak, stating that the justice process should never become a spectacle. But here's the truth. For Bryan Kohberger, the spectacle never stopped. The world outside still wanted to see him, to peer through the cracks of his isolation. And inside, that knowledge only deepened the pressure. Now, let me paint you a picture of what the Idaho Maximum Security Institution truly is, because understanding this place is crucial to understanding what Kohberger faces every single day. This isn't just a prison. It's a fortress built specifically for control. Every corridor is monitored. Every door is controlled electronically. Every movement is tracked. The chairs and tables are bolted to the floor. Even the outdoor yards are concrete enclosures wrapped in layers of metal fencing. Structure here isn't a choice. It's the very air everyone breathes. J Block, where Kohberger lives, is among the most restrictive units in the entire state. Many of Idaho's most dangerous inmates, including multiple death row prisoners, are housed there. His neighbors are men who've already reached the end of the line. Men who know they'll never walk free again. Men who've accepted their fate and found their own ways to survive. The difference? They've made peace with it. Kohberger is still fighting it. Still filing complaints. Still searching for some way to regain control. Every sound in that place, every echo through those vents, reminds him he's surrounded by people who will never leave. And neither will he. During his sentencing, Kaylee Goncalves' mother looked directly at him and said, "May you continue to live your life in misery. You are officially the property of the state of Idaho." That phrase marked the end of everything. Because now, every second of his life belongs to the system. His life is no longer his own. And that leads us to the question everyone's asking. The question that might disturb you more than anything else you've heard today. Why is Bryan Kohberger's prison life considered worse than death? Stay with me because the answer might challenge everything you believe about justice and punishment. Let's start with time. If Kohberger had received the death penalty, he would have faced years on death row, knowing that one day, however distant, there would be an ending, a final moment, a conclusion. But now, he's facing something entirely different. A lifetime inside Idaho's most restrictive facility. Decades, possibly 50 years or more. 50 years of the same routine, the same walls, the same silence. 50 years of isolation, limited human contact, and endless repetition. Death is final. Death is an ending. But what Kohberger experiences is ongoing. It's a slow mental erosion that comes from monotony and loneliness. It's knowing that tomorrow will look exactly like today, and the day after that, and the day after that, stretching forward into infinity. Every morning, he wakes up to the same concrete walls. Every night, he goes to sleep knowing tomorrow will be identical. That knowledge alone, that certainty of permanence, might be the hardest part of all. Research shows that long-term isolation can cause severe psychological effects. Disorientation, anxiety, depression, hallucinations, paranoia. And Kohberger's situation isn't short-term. This is how his life will continue, year after year after year, without change. Inside the Idaho Maximum Security Institution, nearly every decision is made for him. When to shower, when to eat, when to step outside his cell, all determined by a schedule he has no control over. Even small things like commissary orders or video calls depend on approval from staff. His life is structured down to the minute, with almost no personal freedom. The same concrete walls, the same metal fixtures, the same narrow routine, day after day after day. And he knows this is it. No parole, no new beginning, no way out except through time itself. At his sentencing, the victims' families made it clear what they wanted. Justice. They wanted him to live with the weight of his actions every single day. And that reality has arrived. Kohberger's punishment isn't dramatic. It isn't violent. It's quiet. It's unchanging. It's deeply psychological. The voices through the vents still echo. The paperwork continues. The complaints pile up. The days blend together in an endless loop of sameness. This is Bryan Kohberger's reality now. This is his sentence. This is his forever. And unlike death, there's no escape. Only time. Only waiting. Only the slow, grinding passage of identical days stretching forward into an unknowable future. So I want to know what you think. Is this justice? Is life in complete isolation a tougher punishment than death? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because this is a conversation worth having. If this deep dive into the psychology of life sentences has left you thinking, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another true crime mysteries investigation. These stories matter, and your support helps us continue bringing you in-depth coverage of cases that demand attention. The reality is that Bryan Kohberger will spend decades inside those walls. Decades of the same routine, the same isolation, the same psychological pressure. Whether you believe that's appropriate justice or something darker, one thing is certain. The punishment he's experiencing is unlike anything most people can imagine. This is True Crime Mysteries, where we don't just tell you what happened. We show you why it matters. We dig deeper. We ask harder questions. And we never forget the victims whose lives were stolen. Remember Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan. Remember that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about honoring those who were lost. It's about ensuring their stories are never forgotten. And it's about holding accountable those who take innocent lives. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being part of this community that refuses to let these stories fade into silence. I'll see you in the next investigation. Stay curious, stay informed, and never stop seeking the truth.